Ooh, baby. It's getting spicy in the NHL, and trades are dropping, bodies are flying, and you're tapped in to your source for fantasy hockey news. It's the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. And are the Colorado Avalanche ready for another run at Lord Stanley? We'll take a deep look at it on the Thursday episode.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Giddy up, and here we go, hockey heads. It's time for your source for fantasy hockey news. It's a Thursday edition of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the everydayers and shout out to everyone making us your first listen every single day. Right now, it's a good idea to be tapped in every single day because, my goodness me, Steele, there is no shortage of actual news popping now. It's been quiet in the lead up to the deadline, but Wednesday got down to business, and that's what we're going to do on today's episode, taking a look at this Colorado Avalanche deal, a couple of them. They bring in Mittelstadt. They bring in Sean Walker. I want to talk to you about this because now, once again, at the deadline, the Colorado Avalanche have added their players. Is it enough? Let's talk about it. Speaking of which, the Edmonton Oilers not going to be able to add a big name like Gensel. That became clear. They bring in Henrique, a little bit of defensive help in Carrick. Let's talk about that. Tarasenko for cheaps to Florida. What's going to mean for the Senators? What's it going to mean for the Panthers? Steele, I'm flubbing these words because I'm fired up. And we got to talk about this Vegas Golden Knights scene very quickly.
Yep.
Because I think, in addition to adding Anthony Mantha, considering how close they have been most of the year, I expect them to add another body. They may have already done so by the time this episode is aired. Thursday's bets. Right over to you, my friend, because I like these moves from the Colorado Avalanche, and I think bringing in Casey Mittelstadt might bring in a whole other wrinkle of creativity and step into this top six. I'm intrigued to see what you think about it, but I'm intrigued to see what happens with Casey Mittelstadt in that top forward group in Colorado.
I really like these deals from the Colorado Avalanche standpoint. I mean, they improve their forward group. They improve their defensive group. They bring some more power in front of Alexander Georgiev, who's going to have a lot in store for him come playoff time. Again, he's played a lot of regular season games this year, so just getting a little bit stronger in front of their goaltender. So I really like the deals from Colorado Avalanche. Let's just set the stage for what has happened if everyone has not heard about the trade deadline news from all around the league right now. The Colorado Avalanche, as of yesterday or today, whenever you're watching the episode, Colorado Avalanche have acquired Casey Mittelstadt, Sean Walker, a 2026 fifth-round pick, and going out from their team, they've traded away Ryan Johansson, a conditional 2025 first-round pick, top 10 protected, and defenseman Bowen Byram, who has been on the trade block or has been rumored for over the last couple of seasons, finally traded away. I think my favorite deal is the one between the Avalanche and the Sabres for Casey Mittelstadt and Bowen Byram. I think it's a perfect fit for both teams. Now, just looking at the Buffalo Sabres, building a strong defensive group in front of their young goaltenders and Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen and Devin Levi. They've got Owen Power. They've got Rasmus Dahlin. They've got Matthias Samuelsson. They got Bowen Byram now. They continue to strive those young defensemen into great NHL players. But Colorado Avalanche getting Casey Mittelstadt, a guy who leads the Buffalo Sabres with 46 points. He's had an unbelievable season.
Pretty good,
so far up to this point. He's continued to grow his game over the last couple of years. He's a younger fit right now instead of Ryan Johansson. And then the potential of getting it is happening. Valerian Nichushkin will be back at the end of the week. He will be playing I believe on Friday. Then potentially, this is just, I'm going to throw this out there. There's nothing that's been said. But Gabriel Landeskog continues to practice and he continues to skate. So who knows if he'll be back for the playoffs? Most likely not. But it is out there. It's a long shot. But these are all incredible moves from the Colorado Avalanche to really set themselves up nicely going into the postseason.
And let's not forget, I alluded to it off the top, the Colorado Avalanche were a team that did a very similar push at the deadline a couple of years ago, and they brought in Arturi Lehkonen. I think they brought in Manson as well. They brought in another piece that time. And, Lehkonen went out there. I think he had the conference-winning clinching goal and the cup-winning goal that season. So, is it going to pan out like that for their newest additions? You never know. And I actually really like Bowen Byram's future Obviously, fantasy-wise, we were waiting for him to pop off a little faster
I
than
think
we
there's
expected
still a
there.
long way fantasy-wise for Bowen Byram to
Yeah.
get up there in the draft board, but
Yep.
as a player and as a defenseman, he's got a bright future.
100%. That's why I actually like what Buffalo has done here. But for the fact that the Colorado Avalanche were able to bring in, and I know it's only 47 points, but a guy who has had a relatively good offensive season on a team that's had a down year and a down year offensively compared to where they were last year. I think this is a big ad for a Colorado Avalanche team that, look, I think the need that they have had is address the back end. So they got Sean Walker. That's solid. He's all around solid. He has been great for the Philadelphia Flyers this season. I've had him in and out of my lineup as a solid week-to-week ad. He's got 22 points, 109 shots on net, 34 penalty minutes. He has been a solid fantasy piece, 98 block shots, 86 hits. I think his value takes a little bit of a hit in terms of his run out. I don't know where he's going to eat minutes. Does he eat even more than his 23, 22 a night? That's where I might be a little bit concerned fantasy-wise, but in terms of on the ice, this is a huge win for the Colorado Avalanche. They drastically improved their on-ice product. I like it for Buffalo as well. Let's shift gears into Edmonton, Steel, because actually about a week ago, it became pretty clear, or maybe right off the bat, if you were more in tune with what was going on in Edmonton, that they weren't going to be able to make a big Jake Gensel-like move. However, they bring in Adam Henrique, a player who is having a really good season, a player that has a long track record, a veteran guy, a lot of games under his belt. This is the kind of thing. Did they get Bukestad last year or the year before? It was kind of a similar move in terms of a little bit of a veteran presence. They bring in more veteran offensive presence with Adam Henrique, Sam Carrick as well on the back end. What's your take about this move for the Edmonton Oilers? Because once again, Steel, they are playing very, very good hockey.
Yeah, they are playing very, very good hockey, and this is a little bit of a not redemption, but a little bit of a re-meetup between Corey Perry and Adam Henrique, who played a year together in Anaheim. So they'll be playing most likely on the third line, I believe. It's kind of tough because, Edmonton's giving up the first round pick in 2024 as well as the 2025 fifth round pick. And
exactly.
It is a lot to give up for Adam Henrique. Okay, I'll set the stage once again for the Edmonton Oilers. They acquired Adam Henrique, Sam Carrick, and a 2024 seventh rounder. They give up a 2024 first round pick, a 2025 fifth round pick, and the Ducks and the Tampa Bay Lightning are a part of this deal, retaining parts of both Henrique and Carrick's contracts. But I mean, it's always tough to give up a first round pick for Adam Henrique or a player who's over 33, 34 years old. And yeah, he is having a really good season, 42 points in 60 games, 33 penalty minutes. He blocks, he hits, decent amount of shots, his shooting percentage at 16.2. So yeah, I think, this is a good move and a good move overall for the Edmonton Oilers. I don't think it's exactly what I was expecting from them at the NHL trade deadline. Maybe they're not done. Before we hopped on here, I was just scrolling through Twitter, scrolling through Instagram, and I don't know how real this is, but Biz Nasty was talking about that they might flip Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick for maybe Braden Shen of the St. Louis Blues.
I saw that.
I think that's just a rumor. I think that's him just talking out of his what. But I mean, overall, the Edmonton Oilers do get better in the offensive group and on the blue line. They get a right-handed shot defenseman. They get Adam Henrique, who's been pretty solid in the bottom six to really help with guys like Warren Fogle and all those guys. So overall, I think it's an upgrade for the Edmonton Oilers.
And, where I kind of spoke about Sean Walker, I'm not super excited. I don't really know. Look, these just happened. We don't even know where they're getting run out in practice. We don't know deployment in terms of fantasy, because when I look at a player we're going to talk about in a sec, I'm quite confident in saying Vladimir Tarasenko's value goes quite up. Going to Florida, going to a much more positive group than what's going on in Ottawa. He's likely going to play right there in the top six. Actually, most definitely he is. So there, I'm confident in saying that value goes right up. Double check and double circle Tarasenko. Whereas Adam Henrique, he might get playing even less minutes. He might be down there he's going to be down there in the bottom six. So I'm not exactly ready to just say, just because he is going from a bad situation to a good one in terms of teams, that the value goes up. Whereas with Tarasenko, which we'll talk about right around the break, is a situation that I'm looking at. I'll leave it at this with the Edmonton Oilers deal. If they continue to play hockey like this right now, and like they did on that heater, that brought them from the depths of hell right back up to the tops of the table, they might not need to worry about who else they need to add, because that's how good McDavid and Draisaitl are cooking. But let's talk about it a little bit more after the break. I'll let you have your take there. Let's talk about Tarasenko to the Florida Panthers. The best team in the Eastern Conference gets a little bit better, and the Vegas Golden Knights are in trouble. We'll talk about Thursday's bets, of course, but today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Indeed. No matter how the last game went, anytime you take the field, you've got a shot at greatness. Give your team the best shot at winning by recruiting more MVPs with Indeed. Indeed makes it easy to hire great talent. According to ComScore, Indeed is #1 job site worldwide. Indeed delivers 4 times more hires than all other job sites combined, according to Talent Nest. Make sure you're checking out Indeed. With Instant Match, over 90% of employers get quality candidates as soon as they sponsor their job posts, according to Indeed data. We're loving Indeed, and you know you got to be checking out as well. Start hiring right now. A $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/lockedon. Offer valid through March 31st. Go to Indeed.com/lockedon to claim your $75 credit. Indeed.com/lockedon. Terms and conditions apply. You need to hire. You need Indeed. You're on mute still.
The mute button gets me once again.
It's been a while.
It has been a while. It was bound to happen sooner than later, but
That's all right.
Thank you all so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast
There
your
he
first
is.
listen every single day. Make sure you go check out Locked On Sports Today's YouTube channel, the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. You can also find it now on Amazon Fire TV. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus the national shows covering every single league. Make sure you go over there, subscribe, check them out on Amazon Fire TV. Continuing the conversation of this crazy Wednesday, Thursday NHL Trade Deadline show. Florida Panthers, we just got done talking about the Colorado Avalanche, the Edmonton Oilers making some good moves out there in the Western Conference. Let's get over to the Eastern Conference right now. Florida Panthers and Ottawa Senators, and in-division deal here. I don't know the last time or, a big deal like this.
I don't know. Does Ottawa know they're in the Atlantic Division?
I don't know anymore.
Yeah.
Who knows what the odds with those guys over there? But Florida
they're
Panthers,
out in Canada. It's okay.
Florida Panthers, they acquire Vladimir Tarasenko from the Ottawa Senators. In return, going back to Ottawa, a 3rd and 4th round pick. Ottawa also retained 50% of Vladimir Tarasenko's contract. I mean, I am very confused. I'm very bamboozled right now. I don't really know how I'm feeling about this trade. Honestly,
I've got a few feelings still.
It doesn't make any sense to me because what we just talked about, I mean, the Edmonton Oilers just gave up a 1st round pick for Adam Henrique and Sam Carrick.
Correct.
And I know there was other stuff a part of that deal. And even when we go, we're going to talk about the Vegas Golden Knights trade for Anthony Mantha in a little bit and get more into detail about that. But even looking at that deal, they at least got a 2nd round pick and a 4th round pick.
Right.
With 50% retained.
And you're right. There was some variables with the salary retention and third parties, but I'm here for where you're getting at.
It doesn't make sense. You could have waited out a little bit more. You could have waited till at least Friday to squeeze as much potential from Vladimir Tarasenko and GMs looking to acquire him as much as you could. They didn't. They pulled the trigger really, really quickly. And before I throw it over to you, I did send you that picture in our chat. Right after Vladimir Tarasenko was traded to Florida, I got a trade proposal in our fantasy league. Martin Nakash and Dylan Cousins for Vladimir Tarasenko. I ended up accepting it because I needed some right wingers to fill out that position for me. Looking forward to that. Hopefully I can make the playoffs, but I'll throw it back over to you about this deal with Florida and Ottawa.
First of all, love that trade. Second of all, totally agree with all of your takes on what they could have potentially
gotten
more for a player in Tarasenko. And here's my first take. Is definitely he was right up there as the most attractive, one of the most attractive pieces because he does what, Steele? He finishes. He's a finisher. He's a goal scorer. He's a winner, and he's a veteran. And all of those things combined don't exactly come around all the time at the deadline. It makes him to be the perfect hired gun. And Bill Zito, a very, very good GM in Florida, once again knocks it out of the park. He said they were going to do nothing, and they did nothing last year, and they went all the way to the Cup, and I don't think they needed to do anything. You and I wouldn't have been shocked or disappointed if Florida held pat, because the last time I checked, they got 90 points, and they're almost the best team in the entire NHL. Wait, they are the best team in the entire NHL. And then they go out there and add a guy that's even in Ottawa this year, which we don't need to get into that steal because it's clear. He has had a good season. 41 points, 17 goals, and 24 assists, then already joins the likes of Reinhart, Verhaeghe, Tkachuk, and others. This adds another wrinkle to what Florida's going to be able to do in the postseason. And now all of a sudden, Steele, and maybe not so much all of a sudden when you think all the way back to what Matthew Tkachuk did for this team last postseason, I don't think there is a single club suited to take on this Florida team throughout the postseason. You know, obviously teams will emerge, they'll change, there'll be more deals, but right now, and I haven't looked at the odds, this Florida team deserves to be the Stanley Cup favorite, and they're starting to really scare me because I don't see a team, definitely in the East, good enough to take them down in 7 games. And that's just me reading into the numbers too, not just looking at one deal.
For me, the one team would be the New York Rangers. I feel very strongly about the New York Rangers.
That would be a great series.
And I agree with you. The Florida Panthers are the number 1 team in the Eastern Conference right now, but I think the New York Rangers can play with the Florida Panthers in a best of 7 game series. So I'm going with that
I retract
team.
That.
Okay, sounds good. So retracted the statement
because
real
when
quick,
Igor Shesterkin's on his game like he is 100%. Now, that's the whole different factor there, because I'll take Shesterkin over any other goaltender in the league when he's on his game, hands down every day, and that's over guys like Vasilevsky and Sorokin as well. But I'll hand it back over to you. I'm just fired up because the NHL is just popping right now, Steele, and I'm feeling it.
That would be an absolutely incredible series. Hopefully we can maybe get that in the Eastern Conference Finals between the Florida Panthers. But it's crazy how from last year, we're, not us in general, but the entire hockey community was saying, oh, it was a little bit of a fluke from the Florida Panthers getting all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. And now look at them. Everyone's talking about how dangerous, how scary, how detrimental this team can be to their favorite team in the NHL right now. So they're getting it done. Bill Zito's getting it done again, and they've still got some room to make another trade or two. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled over the next couple of days as well before the NHL trade deadline comes to an end. Real quick before we get over to big time bets, let's talk about Anthony Mantha real quick. He was traded to the Vegas Golden Knights from the Washington Capitals. In return, going back to Washington, a 2024 second-round pick, a 2026 fourth-rounder. Washington is also retaining 50% of his salary, which was at 5.9, I believe, 5.75, something along those lines, right under $6 million. But I think this is a great ad for the Vegas Golden Knights, who have been absolutely terrible over the last 10 to 15 games.
Yeah, that's pretty shocking.
They've actually fallen out of top 3 in their division right now. They are in the first wild card spot. They've lost 3 straight. They got pumped 6-3 against the Columbus Blue Jackets. They're 2-7-1 in their last 10. They are struggling to score goals right now. They are struggling to defend in front of their net. They are letting both goaltenders in Logan Thompson and Aiden Hill down. They obviously haven't been playing their best either, but yet again, they are falling right now.
Little bit of technical difficulties there for Steele on that one while he wrapped up his astute point on Anthony Mantha and the Las Vegas Golden Knights. Look, the bottom line is Anthony Mantha has been one of those players that has popped up and down on fantasy radars over the course of his career while he's been in and out of lineups. There was a couple of seasons there where he was almost a point per game player, 2019, 2020 in there, but he was unable to be a regular participant in the Detroit Red Wings lineup. When he was popping 24, 25 goals this year, 20 goals, 14 assists in 34 games. Fantasy relevant, and he is the perfect kind of player to slot into Vegas down the stretch here and get a little bump in fantasy value. He most definitely is going to get a look from me here down the stretch. Enter a little play as the playoffs roll in here as a week-to-week flyer. Not much time left in the fantasy as the fantasy playoffs approach here. But I'll say this, the Vegas Golden Knights just need to play better. Anthony Mantha in or not, I think they'll probably be active in getting another piece just of how good they are in their own end. You can't waste a season like what's going on right now with Aiden Hill. The fact that they're down to 73 points, they're only 5 points up on the Seattle Kraken right now, 2-7-1 in their last 10. It really doesn't matter how many bodies they bring in, because they can bring in all the Anthony Manthas in the world. It's not going to matter unless they start to click. Jack Eichel is back in the fold, hopefully now getting some reps ahead of the postseason push, which is now about to be fully on after this March 8th deadline elapses. They just have to be better. They have to be better front to back, and that is what's going to have to happen if they want to punch a postseason ticket, because a wild card spot, playing like this, they're going to get dusted aside by the likes of some of the top teams. I don't see them doing well against the Dallas Stars and maybe even the Winnipeg Jets. Who knows who they're going to have to play depending on where they sit. Probably not the Jets. Anyway, I'm rambling. I missed Steele already. Shout out to him for not having to deal with the Wi-Fi from Rogers or Bell or whoever it is. I'm not going to throw the shade. But our bad for the technical difficulties. I'm going to have to wrap up this episode right after the break, and I'm going to talk about Thursday's bets. But today's episode, my friends, it's brought to you by a few different sponsors. First of all, it's brought to you by Factor. Make every meal easier. 2-minute meals. Fuel up with Factor's restaurant quality meals that are ready to eat. Heat whenever you are. Pancakes, smoothies, whatever you need and more. Discover a wide variety of easy options in the entire day, like breakfast, midday bites, and more. No prep, no mess meals. Factor meals are ready to eat and heat, so you can eat them wherever you need. Head to factormeals.com/lockedon50. Use code LOCKEDONNHL50 to get $50 off. That's code LOCKEDONNHL50 at factormeals.com/LockedOnNHL to get 50% off. Today's episode is also brought to you by Robinhood Retirement. Did you know that you have a 401k for retirement? You can still have an IRA. Robinhood is the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is boosting every single dollar you transfer from retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. This offer is good through April 30th. Get started at robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info, claim as of Q1, validated by Radius Global One Market Research. Here we go, my friends. Coming off the rails here at the end of the episode, but that's okay because I'm going to bring it all back in. The trades aren't done. We are not done covering the trades and the impact it'll have on your fantasy squad. We talked about the Colorado Avalanche, Buffalo Sabres. We talked a little bit about the moves that they have made. We also talked about the Edmonton Oilers bringing in Adam Henrique. Whatever happens over the next 48 hours, we'll break it down because it all has fantasy impact. And to wrap up my thought on the Vegas Golden Knights and who they might have to run through, it really all comes down to who's up there in that forward group and can they form chemistry. Eichel being out long-term and back, Stone not being up there, bringing in new faces. It all has the potential to go south very quickly. And just in terms of the fantasy and betting angle, let's see how these lineups are deployed. Tap into Waiver Wire Monday next week when we talk about all these new lineup shuffles, because before we even see a few practices or some line combos, then we can really start to analyze the fantasy value for what's going to go down in terms of more bodies on the move. However, Thursday night, 12-game board. I looked all over the place tonight for some value, and I looked all over the place for some angles that made sense. And look, Edmonton on the road into Columbus is obvious, but the Edmonton Oilers are once again playing excellent hockey, and that was a very big win against the Boston Bruins the other night, 2-1 fashion, come from behind victory. And Edmonton is obviously run through 97 and Leon Draisaitl. We know this. We've talked about it for the last 3 or 4 years. But they bring in a guy like Adam Henrique. I don't think they're done. Stuart Skinner has looked rejuvenated and confident. They are starting to play. Look, only 1 or 2 goals allowed against over this last 5-game win streak and beating teams like the Kraken, the Kings, the Penguins. Okay, not so much. And then the Bruins. I'm saying this team is back cooking. And once again, they roll into Columbus with a 6-3-1 record over their last 10 games head-to-head against the Columbus Blue Jackets. That right there would have me more than comfortable enough to ride with the Oilers on the money line minus 240. There's no value there, so I'm obviously doing this one into a little same game parlay. Oilers money line, along with the under. I mentioned how good they've been playing defensively and how bad the Columbus Blue Jackets are in terms of picking up wins when it's a high-scoring game. It seems to be low-scoring game for them. 4-1 against the Rangers, loss. 4-2 against the Carolina Hurricanes, loss. I think it's a very similar situation, 4-1, 4-2 for Edmonton. Shout out to Troy, who's probably listening to this and going to drop some comments. Really appreciate Troy's take. As always, Columbus Blue Jackets fan. He knows what he's talking about. But Oilers, money line, minus 240. The under in Columbus, Edmonton. And my last pick is Leon Draisaitl. Anytime assists. He had 2 goals. I believe he was the 2 goals in that game against Boston the other night, including the game winner that was facilitated by number 97. But I think McDavid, I almost called him Ovechkin there. Holy. I think McDavid is playing so well right now. He's on pace for that 100 assist mark, which is crazy. Only done by Lemieux, Bobby Orr, and Wayne Gretzky. Absolutely special things. But when he starts to facilitate like he has all season long, it's really, you could take a guy on the top power play unit and bet the anytime assist every single night for all of them. I want to tell you the track record on that is probably pretty high. So I'm going to throw out Draisaitl anytime assist, Oilers money line minus 240, and Edmonton under. Edmonton Columbus under 6.5 as a same game parlay. Really loving that one. A lot more trade deadline analysis coming up on tomorrow's episode. We're also going to have a Saturday special episode covering everything that goes down on Friday afternoon all the way up until the deadline. It's going to have massive impacts on your ability to build a winner and a fantasy squad that's going to take you to the promised land in terms of getting that cash in your pocket. Shout out to the everydayer. Shout out to everyone making today's episode one of their first listens. Much love to Steele and the technical difficulties. We will see you back here again tomorrow for another big time trade deadline episode.